you're on.
Thank you, Ryan, and welcome to the Chatham Board of Selectmen, April 6, 2020 meeting. This is a remote participation only meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let me know. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-347-379-1643, conference ID number 573-049-256, followed by the hash or pound sign, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we'll post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we're able to. Okay, so welcome everyone, and we have at last count approximately a little over 20 people on the call. For my board, I just want to let you know that I need to call a roll and to see if you're present, and also as we go along in this meeting, as we go down through the agenda and speak, I'm going to roll call you for comment and questions. That way that it will keep a little better order to us being able to weigh in on the agenda items. After that, then if we have a motion to be made or further discussion, then we will turn to the public for to ask if anybody would like to comment from the public. We ask that you keep your phones muted and your meeting muted, the video, the sound muted, unless you're called on. So I'd like to open up a roll call to see if my board is here. Vice Chair Kokolas?
Here.
Selectman Nicastro?
Present.
Selectman Metters?
Here.
Selectman Dykens? Okay, we're having problems with Jeff logging on, so if somebody could text him and see if we might be able to assist him, that would be helpful. The first order of business is the meeting minutes, to approve the meeting minutes. The first for March 16th to 23rd, and our joint meeting with the Board of Health on the 30th. Do I have a motion to approve the March 16th meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, it's
So
Peter.
moved.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any additions, edits, or comments on the meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, this is 9 several.
Okay, go ahead.
I assume Shauna is on the call.
Yes.
Okay. So on page 3, under item B, this is the public hearing on the restaurant license. Where it says in the last paragraph, it was suggested that the emails received in support. I'd like to change that to it was requested that the emails received in support and in opposition to the application. And on page 6.
Yeah, they're doing Zoom.
Page 6, the 4th paragraph.
Okay.
At the end where it says the construction, this is the comparison between Middle Road. It has a figure of $6.7 million. I think that's the building only. I believe that Mr. Pomeroy indicated that the total price at Middle Road was in the order of $8 million plus, rather than $6 million. So I know we didn't show the slide, but I think that figure needs to be changed. And lastly, on page 7,
Okay,
I'm going through my iPad here, so it's a little. This has to do with the Old Harbor property under item C. I would like to add that concern was expressed about selecting this particular property without first evaluating the full town inventory of unused property. I'll repeat that. Concern was expressed about selecting this particular property, without first evaluating the full town inventory of unused property. Thank you. Those are my corrections to March 16th.
thank you, Dean. Any other corrections or amendments to March 16th meeting minutes?
No.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, I'll take a roll. Selectman Nicastro,
Yes.
Selectman Metters,
Yes.
Selectman Kokolas.
Yes.
Is Selectman Dykens on yet? Okay, not hearing him on. The chair votes yes. Okay, let's move on to March 23rd, 2020 meeting minutes. A motion to approve.
Selectman Metters, motion to approve the minutes of March 23rd, 2020.
Thank you. Second.
Second, Peter?
Okay, thank you. Any additions or edits to the meeting minutes?
Yes, this is Mr. Nicastro. I have a few.
Okay, go ahead, Dean.
On page 3, under B, the continued public hearing, I'd like to add the sentence that all email correspondence will be entered into the record. All email correspondence will be entered into the record. And on page 10, bear with me, please. Under item F, this is the prior bill payment. I think we need to add that there was a 5-0 vote to recommend approval of that. I think that's missing.
Okay.
And then on page 13, this is the long discussion about the petition article. I'd like to add this sentence somewhere in there, Shauna. Concern was expressed to honor the intentions of Proposition 2.5, protect taxpayers. Concern was expressed to honor the intentions of Proposition 2.5 to protect taxpayers. And then at some point, I think we need to add, perhaps at the end, the board took no action on the petition or on the request for a ballot question. The board took no action on the petition or on the request for a ballot question. Those are my edits to March.
Thank you very much, Dean. Any other edits or additions to the March 23rd meeting minutes? I'm going to note that Selectman Dykens has joined the meeting.
Here I am, finally.
Thank you. Any other additions, edits, or comments on the March 23rd, 2020 meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a roll call. Selectman Kokolas.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, we did have a motion.
Yep.
Selectman Kokolas.
Yes.
Selectman Metters.
Yes.
Selectman Nicastro.
Yes.
Selectman Dykens.
Yes.
And the chair says aye. Okay. Then we'll move on to the March 30th, 2020 joint with the Board of Health meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, here.
Okay, Selectman Dykens, motion to approve, and Selectman Kokola second. Do we have any additions, edits to the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote again. Selectman Kokolas.
Yes.
Selectman Nicastro.
Yes.
Selectman Dykens.
Yes.
Selectman Metters.
Yes.
And the chair says aye. Okay. Before we move on to public announcements and agenda item requests, I wanted to just recognize that I didn't say who on the staff was on the call. Our town manager's on the call. Our finance director, Alex Halel, is on the call. IT director, Craig Rowe, is on the call. Our Channel 18, Ryan Damon's on the call. Shauna Neely is on the call. I'm just wondering if there's any other staff on the call. Please recognize yourself.
Yeah, Tobin.
On the call. Okay. Anybody else?
Mandy
Tom
Speakman, COA Director.
Thank you, Mandy. Welcome.
Dan Tobin.
And Dan Tobin. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Robert Duncanson, Director of Health and Natural Resources.
Hi, Dr. Bob. Thank you. Okay, so public announcements and agenda item requests. I'm just going to roll down through the selectmen, the board, to see if anybody has anything. Jeff, do you have anything?
No, not right this minute. Nope.
Okay, Craig. Corey.
Nothing new. No, thank you.
Dean.
No, I do not.
Peter.
No, I don't.
And the chair doesn't either. To the public, is there any public, anybody in the public that has an announcement or agenda item request that is not part of our new business that we're going to discuss?
Yes, it's Steve Buckley. Can you hear me?
Yes, Steve, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to applaud the Board of Selectmen for using this technology to keep everybody informed and engaged during this period, and that there's a Attorney General is having a webinar for those who are interested in this sort of thing on the open meeting law on Thursday, this coming Thursday. I believe it's 12:30 to 2, but you can check on their website for the people. And hopefully they will provide some additional guidance on how to use remote participation for platforms like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much. Any other members of the public that have an announcement or an agenda item request that's not relevant to what we're going to be discussing later?
Selectman Davis,
Yes.
this is Tom Temple. I just want to also say that I'm present for this meeting as well.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. Any other agenda item requests? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to new business. We will start with the COVID-19 update by the Director of Health and Natural Resources and the Town Manager, and then I have an update as well. So I don't know, Jill, do you want to go first, or Dr. Duncanson?
We'll have Dr. Duncanson go first.
Thank you. Dr. Duncanson, Director of Health and Natural Resources, you're on.
Thank you, Shireen. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as of this afternoon, we had a little over 1.3 million cases of COVID-19 worldwide, with 73,000 deaths worldwide. In the United States, we had a little over 350,000, with roughly 8,900 deaths. In Massachusetts, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, we had 13,837 cases with 260 deaths. And on Cape Cod, or in Barnstable County, we had 383 cases. And unfortunately, we had one new death today to bring us up to a total of 7 on Cape Cod. A few other things of note that have taken place recently, and I'll just kind of run down some of these fairly quickly, but just to let you know what's been going on in Chatham. As most of you are probably aware, we have our Emergency Operations Center up and running Monday through Friday from 8 to 4. Primarily what we've been dealing with, along with our CERT team, which is our Community Emergency Response Team, we've been doing prescription pickups for folks as well as grocery pickups. And so far in the past week and a half or 2 weeks or so, we've done 10 of each of those. We're getting more calls recently as the stay-at-home advisory from Governor Baker is in effect longer. as well as the recent advice from the CDC that everyone should wear some kind of face covering whenever they're out in areas where they can't maintain the appropriate social distancing of 6 feet. So places like grocery stores and pharmacies. So we are seeing an uptick in requests from people coming in and making calls and asking us to go pick up groceries and prescriptions. And that's been handled very well with our CERT team of volunteers. Just to give you a couple other quick updates, Broadreach, the healthcare facility here in Chatham, has had no asymptomatic people, which is good news. That's somewhat very heartening because, as you're probably aware, a lot of other nursing homes and similar type facilities in Massachusetts have had real issues. And I think that's really a good indication that they really are practicing and putting in place all the appropriate guidelines and whatnot for both their staff as well as their patients. They've discontinued all visitation except under very limited circumstances. So I think those things are working out well. In terms of what supplies and all the town is getting, we do have word that we're going to be getting 2 shipments from the state, some of it coming from the Strategic National Stockpile, some from other sources, but we're expecting some PPE or personal protective equipment in for our first responders either today or tomorrow. And similarly, we're expecting some more hand disinfectant as well as wipes also coming in either late tonight or tomorrow. And that will, kind of reinforce what we have at the various town buildings to keep our staff safe. We have provided reusable masks to all our staff. Obviously, the first responders, the police, and the fire have normal N95 masks as well as other surgical masks, but we've also gotten reusable cloth masks for all town staff, and those are in the process of being distributed. We've probably distributed about 75 or 80% of those in the last Friday and today. And we have a small group of folks left to take care of in either late today or tomorrow. We've also sent out some information community-wide that I just wanted to reiterate. One is we closed all the playground equipment as of over the weekend, and most of those areas have either been taped off or we've put up orange construction fencing to keep people and children away from those. The primary reason being not so much that people were too close together, but just, you can't play on that equipment without touching it, and there's no easy way to disinfect it on a constant basis. So we made the decision that it was easier to shut those areas down for the foreseeable future. Similarly, and I'm sure most people know this, but we really need to hammer this home, folks, the golf course is closed. I don't know how to say that any more bluntly than that. There were a number of people out with the nice weather, even though they've taken the flags down at the various holes and whatnot. Folks need to stay off the golf course. We realize it's a big, wide open area, but people tend to go out in foursomes and whatnot, and they tend to violate that social distance quite frequently. One of the other big ones that affects Chatham as well as a lot of the other towns on the Cape was guidance that came out from the state regarding lodgings. Effective last week, lodgings can only be used if it's related to the N95 or the COVID, not N95, but the COVID-19 situation. So hotels, motels, Airbnbs and rentals cannot be used for vacations and other kind of events. They can only be used for COVID-19 related activities. So housing first responders, housing doctors and nurses. If somebody needs to self-isolate or quarantine and they can't do it safely in their home, they can go out and stay at a motel or someplace where they can maintain that isolation. But those are really the few limited areas where lodgings can still be used. As I mentioned earlier, the CDC has recommended over the weekend that everyone venturing out to those areas where they can't adequately maintain that social distancing 6-foot guideline should be wearing some kind of a face covering. Does not need to be an N95 mask, does not need to be a surgical mask. We're saving those for the first responders and the healthcare workers who are working directly with people that have COVID-19. But if you need to go out, you can use a reusable mask. You can make your own out of a bandana. You can make your own out of a t-shirt. We've got instructions up on the town website from CDC on how to make those various kind of homemade type of masks. And, you know, if you've got some other kind of mask at home, feel free to use it. But at this point, everyone venturing out, say to the grocery store or the pharmacy or other places where they can't adequately maintain that distance, should be wearing a mask. One of the other questions we got was the safety related to the safety of our drinking water supply. There is no evidence as of yet that COVID-19 or the coronavirus is transmitted through drinking water. Both EPA, the World Health Organization, and the CDC have all indicated that the water supply is safe, and we strongly urge people to continue to use the public water supply, that there's no reason to suspect it is not adequately disinfected and adequately filtered to remove any chance of this virus being transmitted. Frankly, there's no difference between this virus and other viruses in terms of the safety of our drinking water supply, and that's monitored and regulated by both EPA as well as Mass DEP. And lastly, I just wanted to give an update. We're having another meeting with the Board of Health on Monday. One of the areas that the Board of Health is going to be discussing is construction in town. We have received a number of concerns from members of the community regarding residential construction that's going on, either indoors or outdoors, fences being put up and all those kinds of things, and some observations that not all at times they're not totally practicing the social distancing. So the Board of Health is going to discuss that on Monday to see if some stronger steps may need to be taken. And then we'll have a discussion, obviously, with the Board of Selectmen, should the Board of Health feel that anything more stringent other than the guidelines that have come down from the Governor Baker. And we have those construction guidelines as well up on the town's website. And I think that's it. That's a fairly quick synopsis of kind of where we stand. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Bob, thank you for the update and for the work that you and the EOC team has been doing throughout the last 3 weeks. I've sat on some of the meetings. Well, I've sat in on the EOC 3 times a week updates, and it's organized, it's well done. So kudos to your group. I'm going to ask the board if anybody has any questions for Dr. Duncanson, and I'll go down the roll call. Peter, do you have any questions for Bob?
Yes, Madam Chair. One quick one, and I would also reiterate, you go to the meetings, but we get the feedback, and through the town and through Dr. Duncanson, I feel very, very well informed, and especially if we have a question, he always gets back quickly. My question is that, and it may be a little soon to address it, but the governor came out with an initiative, which I think is a good one that no other state is doing, is how are we going to watch people as they get tested? How does that affect us? I mean, I think it's the bright thing to do. We had to start at the state because the resources that would be required by us would be phenomenal. Well, it would take quite a bit. So have you gotten anything about that yet?
Yeah, we haven't gotten a whole lot more than what was released the other day on the governor's initiative. Just so everybody's aware, the way it works in Chatham specifically, because we don't have a public health nurse, which is not uncommon in smaller communities, we rely on the VNA to do all our case follow-ups. So when there's a positive case, it goes to the VNA. They then do all the contact information. They speak with the individual, they speak with the family, they get all the contacts, and then they do the follow-up work for that. What the governor is proposing is bringing in upwards of 1,000 individuals to assist with that effort. Because as you can imagine, as the number of cases increases, that workload becomes huge. I mean, we've been, I hate to use the word lucky, but the number of cases on the Cape is still relatively low, and hopefully it stays that way. But, when you've got almost 14,000 cases statewide, that's a lot of follow-up. And so the governor is proposing to bring in about 1,000 people and some experts in tracking and monitoring all those cases and following up with all their contacts, so we get a better idea of just how widespread this is. That, coupled along with increased testing, will be helpful. I mean, I think we're all waiting for the kind of antibody test that can be given, because right now the tests that are out there only detect active infections. So if you've had COVID-19 and you've recovered and you have antibodies to it, the current test would not really point that out. So we're waiting for that new kind of rapid antibody test, and that'll really give us an idea of just how widespread this is throughout the community.
Thank you. Any, Jeff, do you have any questions for Dr. Duncanson?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Bob, I'm glad Peter brought up that subject. I thought Governor Baker is really kind of getting ahead of it. In the state of Massachusetts last Friday announced this tracing initiative, and I just hope that the VNA also, has the heads up and gets the tracing initiative for any cases that are here in Chatham, so that we can follow up with folks that have potentially had contact with the 3 cases that we have in town. So glad you brought it up, Peter. Thank you, and thanks for the update, Bob. It's good.
Corey, do you have any questions or comments for Dr. Bob?
Just one question, more of a follow-up on the lodging item. Is it correct that those who had existing accommodation rentals or whatever can fulfill those? Because earlier conversations I had with some of our real estate folk in the town had people calling in looking for 2 or 3 month, rental opportunities in town. So are those people allowed to stay, or can you do some clarification if possible, please?
Yeah, when you read the way it was worded was somebody that was, say, in the middle of a rental agreement or a rental period, they could stay through the end of it, but they could not extend it any further, and there could not be any new rentals unless they met the criteria for the COVID-19 type of lodgings.
All right. Yeah, thank you. But obviously the rentals and more houses opening up this time of year, which is, it's starting to get to that season where people start opening up their houses anyway. Obviously trickles into our landscapers, our electricians, our plumbers, the cleaning crews, and all those other folk that are in the industries that are being called upon. And, it opens up that big discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Dean, any questions or comments for Dr. Duncanson?
Well, first, thank you, Bob, for an excellent presentation. I just had one question back on the issue of, I think you said antibody. I can't remember whether it's antibody or antigen, but I've heard Dr. Fauci talk about that as well. Is it anticipated that, how broadly are they going, once that's developed, how broadly are they going to test people for that? Is it going to be everybody in the population? Have we had any information on that? Because I haven't really heard much about that point.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything in terms of how vastly they intend to roll it out. I think it's one of those things that will really depend on how quickly it comes out, how inexpensive it is, all those kinds of things, and then they'll make a determination whether, if this thing drags on over a fairly long period of time, obviously I think more people will be tested. But no, I haven't seen any specifics on it yet, other than they're working on it, and as soon as it's out, it's going to be rolled out. But how extensively, we just haven't gotten any word yet.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Okay. I'm going to put it out to the public to ask if there's any questions for Dr. Duncanson at this time. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our town manager. Jill, do you have an update for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. So I'm going to bring up a file here to share. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to get this to go, and it's a little stuck. So all of the presentations tonight at tonight's meeting are available on mytowngovernment.org. So you'll see something from myself as well as Alex when she does her presentation. And here we go. All right, so the first slide, I wanted to give the board and the public an update of where we are with our staff continuity of operations, and these are the activation levels that are pretty standard in emergency operations. And shortly after the emergency declaration, we went to an operational level on March 23rd for essential staff, but to retain most services with a potential slower response. That was in response to the governor's order. As of tomorrow, we're looking at an operational level that is for critical services, and this will be to suspend non-essential town services and still enact remote work. So there will be a limited number of staff on site, and this is non-public safety. Public safety is completely reporting as usual. We're not at a point yet to suspend all town services. Again, we're all writing this out to see where we go and hope that we never get to that point. But with the governor's new order as of Friday, it also allows us to, for the regulatory boards, to not have to take action as mandated under the present state law, which had a certain timeline. So we're still going to work. We're going to try to get the applications filed, public records requests achieved, as well as anything that we need for continuity of operations. But I am now rotating staff, so there's not that many people actually in the office at one time. And here's a look at our where we are with the number of staff who are actually on site, regular schedule, and there's still a good chunk, 53%, that includes public safety. The red portion of it is on site, but in rotation, so 1 week on, 1 week off. And we do have a number of administrative staff working, teleworking and remotely working. And then as you see the percentages going down, we have some people that are home on call, ready to work when they get the assignment. Some are out, just very few, on self-quarantine. And some are out on other leave that might not relate to COVID-19 at all. It might be another injury or something not related. So within this, we do have some of our employees that are taking care of children during this time, and so they are considered out, but they're also checking in.
Jill, I don't see anything on the screen other than a menu of files.
Yeah, Jill.
Okay. I didn't know that. All right, so I'll email this out to everybody. Sorry, I thought that I had it up. And
I just X out of this, Jill, if you will.
yeah, get out of it.
There. Sorry.
So it was a really beautiful presentation that I will send over to everybody. Sorry about that.
That'd be great. And you can view it on, excuse me, on the website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Jill from the board? Peter, any questions for Jill?
No, no, thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dean?
No, thank you.
Corey?
Nope, good, I'm good.
Jeff?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Jill.
Thanks.
Oh, there's your
Oh,
presentation.
there they are.
Oh, I
Okay.
didn't do anything.
got 'em
That
now.
must be Craig. All right,
Donna.
there's the staffing levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to just go through it again quickly, Jill, if you want?
We're
You
at
can-
orange right now. So we are at a critical services, suspending non-essential. I'll just wait for him to catch up. Yeah, so a lot of our workforce is working from home. So we're at the orange level as of tomorrow. And again, working with the department heads who remain available. They're checking email, they're checking on assignments of staff, but we do have some rotations weekly or daily. Sean and I will not be in the office at the same time, so you probably won't notice because all the phones are forwarded and we're still responding. And that's the same with the other departments as well. And then my pie chart, which is the next slide, it just shows where our staff are and how we're still able to provide services. And the blue chunk, as I said, is a big chunk that we're still on site working our regular schedule. And then the red on site in rotation, next largest piece of the pie. And then we do have a good chunk of staff teleworking and remote. And this also includes some of the employees who have to be home for childcare purposes. So I think we have a pretty good system, and hopefully no one's going to notice that there is some reduction of in-house staff and the services are all being provided. And public safety is working as normal. They haven't changed any of their rotations or their shifts, and we really appreciate the effort that they put in. That's it for me.
Thank you, Jill. Does anybody in the public have a question for Jill?
Shireen, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's
Please say who you are.
Florence.
Okay, go
It's
ahead.
Florence Selden, and it's not necessarily for Jill. Couldn't get in before. I wanted to comment after Dr. Bob. I want to compliment you, Chairman Davis, on your weekly update. Appreciate it on the phone, on the computer. I also want to compliment the town staff on the emergency center response. One of my friends had occasion to need help, and a CERT volunteer did help her. And also the website, if anybody hasn't looked at the town website, I urge you to do that on a daily basis. There's a great coronavirus update, resources of all kinds. So I congratulate the Board of Selectmen and the staff on doing a really good job on this very difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Any other comments or questions from the public? Okay, hearing none, I just want to give my board an update. You had tasked Jeff Dykins and I to do a subcommittee, and before we start on the agenda items, I just wanted to frame that narrative a little bit by giving you an overview of some of the work that we've done since March 30th. The board had asked both Jeff and I to participate in the subcommittee. And we were going to help to figure out from the town's perspective how we can mitigate some of the financial constraints that people are going to see in light of COVID-19. We met twice remotely, and included in those meetings was the town manager and chairman of the finance committee, Stephen Daniel. And we quickly figured out that we needed to get an assessment from the community as to what was happening on the ground. So we reached out to numerous business and nonprofit sectors, realtors, restaurants, commercial fishing and shellfishing, lodging establishment, retail and service industry, building trade, the arts, the elders in town, the schools, our local food markets, and just to talk about what's happening. And the overarching takeaway that most of the aspects of the townspeople and that most aspects of the townspeople and industries are impacted by COVID-19, and their workers and employees will be and already are under financial distress, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, even those who can apply for unemployment and take advantage of the Federal CARES Act. It seems that the food service, shellfishing industry, and the gig industry are particularly hard hit and the most vulnerable. Assessing some of the information from the nonprofit side, their takeaway from Monomoy Community Services and folks like that food is not so much a worry. They have systems in place to service the needy for now, and I'm going to say for now. And they've had several of the nonprofit organizations have had generous donations by local residents and businesses. And there's efforts being coordinated with the COA, Monomoy Community Services, and Monomoy Regional School District to feed the community. There's other nonprofits that have stepped in to meet some of the other needs as well. I guess going forward, the biggest need we're going to see, or what we're hearing from folks, is rent, utilities, medical, and other living expenses, and most importantly, quality of life are going to be impacted by this. So in our conversations with the town manager, just to see what we could do, aside from what we will discuss in, I think it's item C, a waiver of fees and regulation and permits, I asked Jill if there was the ability for the town to set up a community chest or a fund that could help our residents. And because of Department of Revenue rules and laws, that's not allowable by the town itself. So the subcommittee took a different tack, and very soon, within the next few days, you're going to hear how the community can help the community. The Daniel family are spearheading the effort, and an announcement will be made soon on that front. From the town's perspective, what can we do? Well, we will be addressing that in the next agenda, down the line in the agenda. But I hope that this gives everybody a little bit of a framework. We did speak to a number of people, and with what we're seeing from national forecasting, unemployment is not looking good. It doesn't look like it'll rebound as quickly as we expected. I think projections by Goldman Sachs were we weren't going to be back to normal levels by 2023. I'm sure that our receipts are because of our rental income and rental issues that Selectman Menners had talked about, will be impacting on some of those local receipts. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer it, but I appreciated the time that Jill and Jeff and Stephen took on this. We, in very short order, were able to assess quickly through some of the great organizations in this community what is going on in town. So any questions, I'll do a roll. Selectman Kokolas?
No, Madam Chair.
Selectman Nicastro?
No questions, just want to thank you and Jeff and Steve and Daniel for your work on this.
You're welcome. Selectman Metters?
Not at this moment, thank you.
Okay. All right. So thank you. And we will move on to go down to review. I guess I have to ask from the public, is there any questions from the remote participants to me on that report I just gave?
Madam Chair, this is Jill.
Yes.
We had an email come in before for when Dr. Bob was making his presentations. It was from Elaine Gibbs, and she wants to know how many cases were in Chatham. And she had sent an email earlier today and wanted to know if there was any response to that.
Do you have the email there, Jill? Or did Dr. Bob get the email? Can you read it?
Actually, if we can have Dr. Bob talk about the cases, and I'll look for the email.
Okay. Dr. Duncanson, can you weigh in on the cases, please?
Yes, as of today, based on the information that we've received, we have 4 cases in Chatham, one of which has completed the necessary protocol, so it's no longer considered an active case, if you will. But we do have 3 other active positive test results. So that's what we have as of today.
Thank you, Bob. I'm looking at I'm trying to find the email. Let me see. Did that come in earlier? It did, didn't it? Okay, I have it. So I'll read this email if that's okay with everybody, and maybe Dr. Bob can weigh in on some of the particulars. To the Board of Selectmen, with respect to COVID-19 and the expected surge in cases, I'm asking that the following be addressed tonight. I was disappointed not to hear the cases last week when I asked about patient 1 in Chatham attending the special town meeting and why those attendants were never told so they could take care and precaution with family and friends. At least 2/3 of those attendants were in the high-risk demographic. A Upon questioning by the Board of Health last week, Dr. Duncanson said he didn't know, but would check with the town council as to the enforcement powers of the Board of Health. It is essential that the Board of Health and the town have these answers today. The surge has begun. The town should prepare over the next few weeks by knowing what authority the Board of Health has at the local level if required. Barnstable County has 167 cases last Monday at noon. Cases have doubled in the week to 347. An example, can the Board of Health issue a notice now that mask gloves must be worn in public for the next 2 weeks with the option to extend as strongly recommended by the federal COVID-19 team? Bob, can you weigh on that right now? Is that possible? Did you?
Yeah, let me address the first couple of points in the email.
Yeah.
We have been talking with town council about the Board of Health's authority. As you folks are probably aware, boards of health have very extensive authority under Massachusetts general law. So it's not so much a question of does the Board of Health have this authority, but how and when is the Board of Health going to use that authority? So we've been talking with town council about it. The board could certainly mandate the wearing of masks and gloves. It would be extremely unwieldy. It would be difficult to enforce. So, right now, CDC and others have presented sufficient guidelines for these types of activities. I could tell you on my travels around town today, I saw quite a few people utilizing face coverings, not necessarily masks, but some type of face covering. And I've seen people wearing gloves when they should be wearing gloves. As we've been saying for the last several weeks, the quickest and easiest way to beat this thing back is through social distancing. There is some indication that, 6 feet, especially in areas like grocery stores and whatnot, where it's difficult to maintain those distances, that masks will be of some value. And so that's why CDC has come out with their recommendation. Again, the Board of Health could certainly mandate such, but it really becomes a question of what level of enforcement would we be looking for. And as I said, the Board of Health is going to be discussing that topic as well as the construction topic at their meeting on Monday.
Thank you, Bob. There's a couple of other issues here that she would like to address. Can the Board of Health direct law enforcement to issue warnings and fines? Apparently, not fines. Yeah.
Yes, they could. Well, we couldn't necessarily direct law enforcement. There can be warnings or fines within a piece of legislation or regulation or whatever. And then it would be determined who's the enforcing agent. Well, I mean, we couldn't direct it necessarily, but we could certainly say, they or the health agent or some other body is the enforcing agent for such a thing, and then go from there.
Okay. There was also a suggestion to just move the electronic sign at the Universal Church for repositioning. It's apparently there's some blocking there.
That was already in the works, and hopefully was taken care of today.
Shireen, that was taken care of today. It's Tom Temple, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Tom. I haven't been in town, so I didn't know. Another question from Ms. Gibbs is, can the town assure residents moving forward as the surge is now on us that those in contact with diagnosed individuals will be notified quickly?
I can say yes, but, nothing is absolute. We and VNA are doing the best we can. You have to understand, and this is one of the, the frustrating things sometimes, we have to rely on the information that people give us. If they only say they, we're in contact with 2 individuals, when in reality it was 20 or 30, we don't know that. we only know the 2 individuals that they, necessarily told us about, not the other 20 or 30. So, that makes it somewhat difficult in terms of following up with everybody. And then as we indicated last week during the Board of Health discussion, there was some revision or updating to the guidelines that to be in close contact, you had to be within that 6-foot zone for like more than 15 minutes. And so if people don't meet that criteria, or the person who tested positive doesn't tell us that they were in that situation, we have no way of knowing about it. So VNA is doing their absolute best to notify everybody and follow up with all the contact information that they're provided, and they have been doing a great job of it.
Okay, thank you, Bob. There's another part of her email, but it's in relationship to budget, so I'm going to hold off on that till we get to that meeting agenda. Shauna, can you make sure that we have this added into the record, since she wasn't here to make that public for our meeting minutes? That would be great. Thanks. All right, moving on. The review draft directive to the town boards, committees, and commissions for meetings and meeting materials uploaded to mytowngovernment.org through May 4th, 2020. Jill, is this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. So we have a directive in place that was issued on March 12th, and that went through April 7th, tomorrow, about the cancellation of all advisory committee meetings until further notice, and that the regulatory boards and legislative boards and committees shall meet only as necessary, and to limit their agenda to items that are absolutely necessary. As you know, the governor has then extended his order for 10 people in a room or less to May 4th. And so we wanted to get the board's input about what you'd like to do with the non-regulatory boards, considering now that we're more comfortable using a virtual platform, with also the understanding that staffing is reduced when it comes to preparation and follow-up.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to reach out to the board for some questions or some discussion on this. Corey, I know that you had brought you had some questions and some comments on that. Do you want to get going first?
Sure, yeah, that's fine. No, I'm perfectly fine. I've been reached out to from some of my boards and committees about when can they start, discussing items, and they completely understand, obviously, what we're all going through right now. So there's no big rush on many of them. I mean, the Golf Course Advisory Committee, for example, golf course is closed. People shouldn't be playing there. So there's really nothing to discuss. Obviously, small in the big scheme of things, the parade committee would like to start talking at some point, because they need to plan, plan B, possibly for what may or may not happen for July 4th. I mean, it's a couple months away, but this group does do a lot of planning. So whatever steps we take for to not overwhelm our staff under these circumstances, very comfortable with. I just want to be able to have some mechanism at some point to allow any of these groups to reach out to the town manager or their staff liaison to do whatever they can to have some minor communication for what actions they seem, required.
So Corey, you're asking that, or you're stating that you to give the town manager discretion into deciding whether it's prudent for any of the advisory committees to meet. Is that?
Well, I just want to understand our resources. I mean, I understand our resources have shifted focus to deal with this COVID-19 situation. Very appropriate. I just want to, in some time, be able to have some of these committees, if they have something that they really feel they need to meet on, whether it be in a week or a month, that we provide them some mechanism to do that properly, so they can do the job that we've asked them to do too.
Okay, thank you. Dean, do you have any comments or questions on this matter?
Well, I have not heard from any of my advisory committees, so I don't get the impression that they're under any urgency to hold a formal meeting. I would think that no advisory committee should meet unless it's essential, given that we have basically a limited staffing opportunity. If they do need to meet, obviously they could take advantage of the virtual meeting platforms that we have available. But again, allowing for staffing availability, I would hope that that would be a rather small usage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Totally agree with what Selectman DeCastro just stated.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I've had a couple of discussions. They were early on with, let's say, the bicycle committee, and they're holding back. I understand if any of the advisory committees are going to meet, they just can't jump on a Zoom meeting. They have to go through the town, I would imagine, right? So that limits our resources on the and the regulatory boards. I think we're handling that pretty well. I don't see any problems. Although trying to get video and well, I don't know if it was a town meeting together for the planning board was not very successful, but they could still do town meeting. So that's really all I've heard.
Okay. All right. I haven't heard from any of my advisory committees. Just as an anecdote, I did hear from the Conservation Commission on their sudden workload when people rush to put their applications in prior to the closing here. So Jill, what's our action you need from us for this tonight?
So it's canceling all advisory committee meetings until further notice. Regulatory boards can still meet, and in particular with the Conservation Commission, with the governor's directive that came out on Friday, there is some relief, not only the governor's directive, but state legislation. So I know that they'll work with staff on that. So I think I'm all set. The next step for those regulatory meetings is to make sure that the agenda is posted with all the background documents, so whatever plans, packet materials to be posted before the meeting, because on this platform, the residents need to be able to follow along through mytowngovernment.org. But other than that, I could just extend the order that was in your packet to May 4th, and it will essentially say the same.
So the order itself says to suspend the advisory committee meetings for.
Yeah, it had a start date of March 12th, and then it said until further notice. And again, with the extended directive, wanted to run it by the Board of Selectmen so that you're okay with it remaining in place. And we'll re-examine it probably a week before the May 4th expiration of the current governor's order.
Okay. Do I have anybody who'd like to entertain a motion to extend the order?
So I don't think really any action is necessary unless you wanted to rescind the order and allow meetings to occur as they had been.
Okay. Is there any sense that anybody, it doesn't sound like there's any sense that anybody wants to rescind the order. So we're fine and no action will be taken, just to continue.
Okay, with me.
Okay.
Steve Buckley, can I make a comment? I didn't know if you were moving along, so I was afraid I'd miss.
I'm getting ready to ask that. Go ahead, Stephen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, I mean, while everybody has some extra time at home, I think this is a great opportunity for committee members and not just chairs of committees to become used to the learning curve that you all are going through right now with Microsoft Teams. I know it seems like everybody's talking about Zoom, but it's very similar in that sense. But this would be a good time, I think, for some training. And I would love to be able, I'm not a medical worker, so I can't volunteer at a hospital, but I know a lot about this type of technology and have a lot of experience. And so I'd like to figure out some way that I can volunteer my services to let's say, play around with those committee members and chairs that would like to try it out before, not ready for prime time type stuff where they don't want to embarrass themselves, at the beginning. So it's kind of like a cart and horse thing. They don't want to try it until they try it, but this might be a great time even before March 4th to become used to it. So I'm just putting that out there as a way that an informal gathering, not a public body, but just a training session for committees or anyone who wants to learn how this new technology works. So that's
Stephen, that's a great idea. I think we could take note of that and follow up later.
Okay.
Discussion. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Barbara Siegel.
Thank you, Barbara. Go ahead. Yep.
As you know, that I have been in touch with you and Dean, and we will, when we get the go-ahead from the IT person, we'll be using Microsoft Teams. And there's, of course, our April meeting was canceled, which was fine. And as long as we get to meet once before some town meeting, whenever that is, it would be great.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara.
Yep.
Any other remote participant comments or questions? Okay, we're going to move on to the item B. Consider waiving requirement for board permission to close an establishment holding a liquor license for more than 2 weeks. I know Shauna brought this to our attention. Shauna, is this for you to weigh in on, or?
Sure, I can. I just wanted to give as much flexibility to our restaurants and license holders as possible during this time. So just waiving this requirement to notify the board of a 2-week or more closure it would just take one, administrative thing off of their plate at this point.
Thank you. It certainly makes sense in light of everything that's going on with a lot of establishments right now. Do we have any comments or questions from the board? Jeff, do you have anything?
No, Madam Chair, I move the board waive the written advance notification of the board by annual on-premises licensees of any closure or cessation of license activities until such time as the federal, state, and local declarations of emergency are lifted.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that?
Second, Peter.
Peter, thank you. Any further discussion from the rest of the members of the board? Dean?
Shereen, thank you. Just a question for Shauna. I totally support this. Will you be notified after the fact if someone does extend their closure?
I'm aware of several establishments that have closed and reopened, and some that are still closed at this point. So I'm in touch with the licensees.
Okay, thank you.
Corey, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I support this.
Okay, as I do I. Any questions from the remote participants? Not hearing any, I will take a roll vote. Selectman Kokolas.
Yes.
Selectman Nicastro.
Yes.
Selectman Metters.
Yes.
Selectman Dykens.
Yes.
And Selectman, the chair says aye. So the motion passed 5-0. Thank you. Okay, item C is a discussion of other waivers, fees, regulations, and permits. Just looking at, does somebody want to make this presentation to us or give us some background? Bill?
All right,
No.
Shauna, were you going to do it?
Sure. So we reached out to the department heads, asking them to identify any relief to our citizens or businesses or specific permit holders that we could provide at this time. And it could have been anything, maybe a fee waiver, an extension of a deadline, or a regulation waiver, just as you just approved. So we have a few that would require board action. The The first being the deadline extension to install separate water meters for pools and irrigation systems. That was due, it was going to be January 21st of 2021, suggesting that be extended until 2022.
Okay.
Then another would be the extend the expiration dates of current stickers for Nauset Beach OSV access. Current stickers expire on April 30th. Be approving an extension, whether or not that's a full year or a 6 months, 3 months, however you wanted to address that, that would need board approval. And the final one that would need action by the board would be to delay or defer to special town landing special use permits. And that would impact about 26 permit holders and a financial impact to the town of about $2,000.
Okay, and obviously we've waived the, we've extended the deadline for the commercial permit holders already. We did that on March 23rd, 20. All the docking fees and mooring permits, those are already been renewed at this point, correct?
Yeah, they should have been.
Yeah, I think
They're on the calendar year.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, do we have any questions for Shauna or comments? I'll go
Madam
down
Chair.
the row.
It's Jill. I just wanted Bob to weigh in on the Nauset Beach ORV access, because I know that Orleans Selectmen, they met last week and they voted to have a 1-year contract with the town of Chatham. And I know we owe you an update, but we just found this out today. So Bob, did you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. Yeah. We had proposed a 3-year agreement with Orleans. They just came back today and said 1 year. This suggestion actually arose out of some comments from some of the ORV users that just said, we'd appreciate it if the town would consider extending the stickers for some period of time. And I said, sounds like a good idea. I could take it up with the board because it came in a day or two after, the memo went out regarding this topic. So I said, I'll put it on the list for the board's consideration. I'm thinking similar to what we did with the shellfish licenses, although as you can imagine, the amounts aren't as great. And we don't deal with the folks with the self-contains. Those are all done through Orleans. So, the big ticket ones are not necessarily for Chatham residents, if you will. So it's really up to the board as to whether or not you feel that, there's any reason to extend the current stickers beyond the normal expiration date.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go down the board for questions. Peter?
No, Madam Chair, I'm good.
Dean?
Yeah, a question for Dr. Bob regarding the irrigation and so we would be moving this back a year, 1 year, and does that require any kind of public hearing? It's a regulation of the town that's adopted by the board. Do we have to change the regulation, or do we need to do anything other than take a vote tonight to authorize the extension?
No, technically it would require a vote by the board sitting as water and sewer commissioners because it is in the water regulations.
Do we have it? We have authority to waive the regulation without changing the regulation, without amending the regulation? That's what I'm getting at.
I would have to go and take a look at the regulation and see specifically what language may be available to us. But I think the thought was this wasn't something you had to do tonight necessarily, but if the board wanted to, move in that direction, we could certainly go ahead and schedule a public hearing at some point. I don't think anybody would complain about it. And then we just go ahead and have the regulation amended, to give us the new date of 2022.
I'm perfectly willing.
Dean, we can't hear you.
We can sort out the. I'm perfectly willing. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm perfectly willing to take a vote extending that deadline out for a year, and I think we can sort out the legal technicalities of whatever hearing or advice we might want to get from the Water and Sewer Committee down the line when these bodies are up and running.
Do you want to make a motion tonight, Dean?
Well, I would offer a motion to support all the waivers that have been proposed in the material that has been presented to the board.
Thank you. Do you have a second on that?
Yeah, I'll
Second
second it for discussion.
second for discussion purposes, Madam Chair.
Second for discussion purposes by
Yeah.
Jeff. Okay. Jeff, why don't you go right ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. On the extension of the over the beach on the beach stickers, you know, I think we should be somewhat consistent and maybe extend those to June 30th or so. But and will the piping plovers be gone by then? And is that a meaningful extension for folks? What are your thoughts, Dr. Bob, and Shireen as well? What are your thoughts?
I can tell you the piping plovers will not be gone by then. They will be, you know, we'll probably have nests. We may have a few babies starting to run around, but June is a very busy month. You know, normally the beach is closed down at the beginning, either the end of May or beginning of June, and are closed through mid-July at least. You know, the birds arrived a little bit earlier this year. I haven't gotten a report of what this, you know, this past storm that we had kind of over the weekend, the end of last week with the heavy winds and all may have done, but we had a number of birds that were already, you know, exhibiting territorial behavior and whatnot. So we were hoping that maybe things would happen a little sooner this year, but no, June is definitely a busy time.
So, but I mean, I guess my question is, if we extend it to June 30th to be consistent with the commercial shellfish permit applications or holders, is that what they're seeking, you think? A couple month extension?
Yeah, there was no, when they brought it up to me, they didn't indicate any specific timeline. You know, so I think June 30th is probably appropriate. It gives them a couple more months to use their current sticker.
Okay. All right. And then just back to the separate water meters. I mean, so do we think we have a lot of people out there that are looking to install irrigation systems like in short order? I mean, we also have people that are in this business. So I'm thinking about the small business person that may be losing business as a result of this extension. That may really want this business. That's all.
Who spoke up?
Sorry, this is Corey. No, my comment on this, I was talking to some plumbers, and some of are not doing many residential calls on certain things right now. They're trying to minimize residential calls because of social distancing and everything else. So I just threw this out there because I'm afraid that there's going to be a backlog because of certain precautions certain trades folk are going to take. And if this is something that would be a relief to both the homeowner and those who would install these meters and stuff. So it's not something I think we have to act on right away, but I do think it's something that we should really consider. I strongly do.
Corey, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a deadline extension. That doesn't mean that people won't go ahead and try to plan if they wanted to plan.
Oh, yeah.
But it just gives that safety breathing room. Any other comments or questions before we vote on this? Peter?
No more questions. I agree. We don't have to do it right away, but I see no reason why not. You can't extend it for 2 months or so.
Okay. Do we have any comments or questions from the remote participants? Okay, not hearing any. We can go ahead and vote. Can you repeat the motion again, Dean? I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, the motion was to adopt the proposed waivers, including fee waivers that are recited in the matrix that was presented to us. And I note that with respect to the irrigation and pools, that's 2022. If there's a sense that we don't want to either take that particular action or tonight or want to shorten the extension, then I would amend the motion. I'm simply proposing it as an extension of our emergency activities here, understanding that in that particular case, we might have to amend a regulation.
And then if I might add, if I could, I would extend the beach stickers till June 30th.
Thank you. Jeff, I was just going to bring that up.
I'll amend the motion to accommodate that.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the amended motion?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a roll. Selectman Kokolas,
Aye.
Nicastro,
Aye.
Duncan,
Aye.
Metters,
Aye.
and chair says aye. Okay. Thank you, Shauna and staff, for putting that together. All right, our next item coming up is the fiscal 2021 and the annual, I'm sorry, what?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
can I, just for clarification, were we gonna have a chance to talk about property tax bills? Because that's in our packet also.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
go right ahead.
No. This is something that, I'm not saying I've got a ton of phone calls on, but I have received a couple of phone calls. Obviously, this is one of our big ticket items this time of year. Or every 6 months we get our wonderful tax bill. And people have expressed concern about it. And I do know that there's a memo in our packet, and there's payment plan opportunities. So I'd like to just kind of have maybe the town manager or Alex kind of explain the options. And I'd also like to consider maybe doing something a little bit better for our taxpayers if possible.
Okay, let's open up the discussion a little bit. I'm sorry, that's a slip of paper that oh, there it is. All right, there it is. Okay.
All right, Alex, do you want to explain it?
Jill, did you just ask, this is Alex, did you just ask me to explain it?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we were waiting for the legislation that was passed last Friday to come down, which will give us, any city or town, the option to delay the collection of tax bills and also waive the payment of interest and other penalties up to, I believe it's June 1st. So tax bills are due May 1st. The board would have to agree to this. We didn't put this on your agenda for tonight. I was going to raise this when we talked about, some of the items later on in the packet. So on the tax bills being due. So the town treasurer has said that she's not going to start any demands until later on, so she's holding off on those, and we'll try to work with taxpayers to set up a payment plan if they are facing difficulties. Again, we'll get together a memo for you for probably your next meeting or sometime before the due date of May 1st, provided offices are still closed, which the governor's order goes through May 4th. So they would still be closed to the public, and we could extend that due date to June 1st.
Thank you, Alex. Corey, does that satisfy what you're asking, or did you want to move on?
Yeah, no, I guess, I mean, if we could, I'm looking at, if we have an opportunity to extend that deadline, I think that would be a benefit to many taxpayers. I would, like to encourage them to reach out to get the details on a payment plan. That is probably a tool that maybe people can use because there's, individual residents are going to be dealt with this burden right now. We have, I'm sure, different landlords, residential, commercial, who, if tenants can't pay the rent, then maybe they can't pay the property tax. It's a trickle effect. So I just want to make sure that we, I think Chatham is very fiscally sound. We've been smart with planning our finances over the years, and this is going to be a tough time for a lot of our citizens. And if we can, if we have any opportunity to reach out and really extend our assistance to our taxpayers, I'd like to exercise that if we could.
Is there any reason why that couldn't be done tonight as a matter of an action, Corey, to extend it to June 1st? Is there more questions that we need to talk about?
I'm just throwing it out there. I know people are worried. I mean, finances, they're paying their bills, they're paying their, mortgages. This time of year, it's springtime, people have spent, trying to, start up the spring and the summer. Everyone's, wallet's a little bit tighter probably. Tax bills are twice a year. It's the phone calls that I've gotten. I'm not hundreds of them, but I've got a handful of them, and the tax bill is the topic of conversation. So I just throw it out there. I think if we are in a position as a town to offer some relief or offer some assistance within whatever limits we have, I like to exercise it. I think it's just the way that Chatham does it. We look out for Chatham Strong, whatever you want to call it. We talk about preserving our heritage and preserving our community. I don't want to ramble, but I would like to really think outside the box and try to really help out if we have that opportunity.
So Corey, just for your information, I have reached out to the Lower Cape Board of the chairmen of all the boards, from Brewster to Provincetown, just to reach out and see, what are they doing to mitigate anything? What are their actions they're taking? Just on a personal level, one-on-one. So David Whitney, the chair from Brewster, got back to me and said that yesterday they voted to postpone real estate tax bills mailing and due date. Their mailing goes out, I guess, very soon, but they are changing their due date to June 1st. Mm-hmm. So I think that other towns are taking similar actions, and I just wanted to give you that information if you wanted to make a motion.
I would love to make a motion to be able to extend our property tax bills until June 1st.
Is that what you're doing now?
that is my motion. I want to make sure that we offer payment plans in accordance with our, Mass General laws. So
yes, that's great. Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Jeff second, Corey made the motion. Discussion from the board. Peter.
Yeah, I agree. The only comment I have is how far can we go? Can we go to the end of June? Not it's just a question. And because this problem isn't going to go away. I mean, we're going to have people that are, we're delaying it for a couple of months, which isn't bad. But, once we have no idea when this is going to end, and it's going to start impacting on next year, too. So one's going to be backed up against the other. I don't know. I see Alex is on there. You have any comments on that part?
Yes, thank you, Selectman Kukulis. Per the governor's order, we can only extend to June 1st. And further to Mr. Metter's motion, I would also extend the date of the real estate interest due to correspond to the due date of June 1st, just technicality. Okay. I think it would automatically go, but I think it's probably good to add that in.
We can amend that. That's fine.
Thank you, Alex, for that. I do think that the June 1st would obviously give everybody a little bit of breathing room to plan. Jeff, I heard you say, uh-oh. Did you have a comment? Jeff? Okay, Dean, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think we're covered under the agenda to do this because it says discussion of other waivers. And I think what's in the parentheses is intended to be exemplative and not exclusive. So I would support it. If we could have done it till June 30th, I would have supported that. I did want to ask Alex, this would include also personal property taxes that are due, Alex, and also I saw something in the packet about collections to date. I just wonder how they seem to be doing okay. I just wonder how that would be in comparison to prior years.
I believe that the collections to date are actually ahead of prior years or about the same. We have to, usually the first week tax bills go go out. We have quite a few people pay online. So that is good. But we can track that for you and get a report to you at the end of the week where we were last year. We haven't looked at that yet.
So this would also cover personal property taxes, this extension?
That's correct.
Okay. That would be beneficial to commercial properties as well as seasonal residents.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No further.
Thank you, Dean. Jeff, did you want to weigh in?
Madam Chair, I think the OO's his screen froze, and so he's been dropped. So we'll have to wait for him to come back.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead with the vote if that's okay with everybody, unless you want to wait. All right. I'm going to take a roll call on the vote. And I'm not sure how to address the fact that, well, he's not present. Okay. Selectman Kokolas.
Aye.
Selectman DeCastro.
I would suggest, Madam Chair, that when Jeff rejoins, he could be entitled to cast his vote on this motion.
Thank you. All right. Mm-hmm. Did you say aye, Dean?
Yeah, yes, I did.
Corey?
Aye.
The chair says aye, and we will announce the vote after we'll ask Jeffrey to weigh in when he gets back, but for now, the vote is 4-0. Okay, I think I did that right. All right, thank you very much. All right, are we prepared to move on? Okay, thank you. So next is fiscal year 2021, an annual town meeting 2020, funding priorities, the town manager and finance director. And the first order is COVID-19 impact on fiscal year 2020 budget. Alex and Jill.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I can just note that item B, which was the intermunicipal agreement for the sealer of weights and measures with the town of Barnstable, has been postponed. So that's why we jumped to number 3.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Alex, you can go.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn off my camera, but I have a PowerPoint presentation that follows along with the item agenda in your packet. And as Jill and I have been looking at this, let me just mute this. So as Jill and I have been looking at the FY 2020 budget and some of the receipts, and then with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, we really need to look at where we're at right now and where we're going for the FY 2021 proposed budgets, basically in regards to our local estimated receipts, which are the biggest impact probably of the COVID-19 crisis. So I'm going to start the presentation right now, and bear with me while I pull this up on my screen. And okay. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, this is a budget update for the current fiscal year and the proposed FY 2021 budgets, as we just discussed. So for FY 2020, the good news is that our revenues right now are about 98% of what we've estimated for our local estimated receipts. We'll continue to monitor those revenues. Again, most of these are the local estimated receipts. Tax bills just went out on March 23rd. So we're looking at those, as I mentioned in my staff report. We've collected quite a bit of the, the first week was a good week of collections for the tax bills, the real estate tax bills. And motor vehicle excise, those have all been due. So we don't have any big motor vehicle excise. Our major commitment was back in February. So our local estimate receipts, as I said, are 98%. Depending on what happens for the next 2 months, we'll see where we end up for FY 2020. I'm not expecting a lot with the fee waivers and deferrals, then those will decrease, but we don't have an issue with a revenue deficit, so that's good news. The town manager implemented a spending freeze for non-essential expenses. It was issued on March 23rd, and that's to try to preserve any budgets that we have right now and keep those turnbacks to generate free cash and have liquidity going forward. And then again, as I said, The tax bills were issued on March 23rd. We're encouraging online bill payment, which is free of charge for the ACH payments. So please, people, if you can pay online, that's a great way to do it. They're now due June 1st. So again, as we discussed tonight, June 1st is now the due date for the tax bills. So looking at sorry.
Go ahead.
Moving forward for FY 2021, which begins July 1st and ends on June 30th, 2020, we're reviewing the proposed budgets, both the operating and the capital. We're looking at the other annual town meeting articles, the funding sources, and what articles are out there. And then looking at the annual town meeting and town election, what the possible dates might be for those, and if those can fall prior to the end of the fiscal year, being June 30th, or would have to be after the end of the fiscal year. So the FY 2021 operating budget, as it was voted by the Board of Selectmen for inclusion on the town meeting warrant back on February 24th, was proposed at $32,552,330. And that's funded basically through the tax levy. $31,971,630 was through raise and appropriate, which is the tax levy, local estimated receipts, and our very small amount of state aid that we get. And then the remainder of that, the $580,700 is from other available funds, the Wetlands Protection Fund, the Waterways Improvement Fund, and the PEG Cable Access Fund. And this is the operating budget. So with the concerns on the local estimated receipts, we have to look at, we're reviewing the budget items for FY 2021 in providing relief to taxpayers, plus the amount that we see probably will be a reduction in the amount raised through the tax levy, which is local estimated receipts and the tax levy. So again, reservation of free cash and reducing the amount raised through the tax levy, which is a direct impact on the tax rate. And then we're also looking at the priority funding for the core services, which, has been reduced from level services. So what are our core services? What are our level services? So starting with the local estimated receipts, and I'm really focusing on this a lot, as we all know that the local estimated receipts for FY 2021, when we had presented this, was 80% of our prior actuals. So we had presented the budget with local estimated receipts at just over $7 million. So looking at reducing that amount from 80% downwards based on probably a lot less local estimated receipts, 75% would equal $6,196,000, 62%, $5,126,000, 60%, $4,906,000, and 50%, $4,161,000 and some change. And again, the local receipts offset the amount that's raised through the tax levy. So the higher the local receipts, the less, the lower the tax rate. So looking at our different categories, and we're probably seeing that we will have a reduction in our revenue under these following categories, which are some of our larger categories. Motor vehicle excise. When you have a downturn in the economy, people don't go out and buy new vehicles. Hotel motel receipts. Hotels are closed. We know that there's going to be a downturn. Meals tax. Restaurants are closed. Even if they're open for takeout, it's a lot less than what they've been doing. So we're looking at that. Penalties and interest on our tax bills. We're waiving some of those interest fees through June 1st, so that will decrease. Some of the fees that we have, fees for services, will decrease. Recreation, we don't know what our recreation programs will be for the summer. This also includes some of those beach receipts. Licenses and permits, and then of course interest income. So this slide shows, and I don't know how well you can see it, but it shows our local estimated receipts, where we had projected the 7 million is on the left-hand column, which was 80% of the prior actual. And if we look at 60% of prior year actual, then that will leave 4,906,000. And I'm showing some of the categories that we've reduced. And you can see motor vehicle going from 1.1 million down to 805,000. Meals tax, more than half, 425,000 to 175,000. Hotel motel from 1.345 in estimates down to 570,000. So again, these are, we don't have to run up through all of these, but you can see these for your information, and if you have any questions on these and what we're looking at. And again, this was just based on a 60% of prior year actual. Okay, so moving into the operating budget, what we had approved and proposed to go forward to town meeting for the FY 2021 budget was a $32,552,329. And if we look at a level funded budget, level funded to FY 2020, the current year's budget, we need to cut out of the proposed budget $1,655,031. So again, our operating budget funded by local receipts and the tax levy. If we need to reduce the local estimated receipts downwards from that 80%, a 75% reduction, we wouldn't have to reduce the budget as it's presented right now. 62%, we'd have to reduce the budget by $526,800. 60%, over $1 million, and 50%, 1.75. And I have to say, looking at this, I've already factored in some reductions proposed that I need the board's direction on, that we're looking at in the future for some items that have been funded through the tax levy that we're looking at reducing. And then again, any impact on this, as you can see with the 75% reduction, that would have a direct impact on the tax rate and would increase it because we'd be using up some of that excess levy capacity. So looking again at the operating budget and some of the scenarios that we could do, we could look at a 1% reduction across all departments. Of course, we can't include debt service because that's already programmed in. Our insurances, health insurance, benefits, our Barnstable County retirement assessment, and some of the service contracts, such as our sewer operating contract for our sewer services. So a 1% reduction looks roughly at like $245,740. Then we'd have to look at, excuse me, strategic reductions. What other reductions could we make? We would look at reassessing our staffing needs. We proposed 4 new positions, 4 FTEs for a total of $254,980. Seasonal staffing levels. What level of staff will we need if we do have reduced service and reduced, reduced use of some of the services in the town. So again, we'll continue to review all departmental expense line items to see if there's further reductions from the ones that we've looked at. So then going back to our the FY 2021 capital budget article and a preliminary review, back on February 24th, it was presented at $2,876,345. We're looking at some of the items that we could reduce, and I've talked to some of the department heads. We have a comprehensive storage plan for $50,000. We have conservation lands management for $10,000. We have a replacement for a 6-wheeler truck of $220,000. And we have there's about 2 or 3 DPW truck replacements. We have one for $90,000 that we could look to defer. So that would be a reduction of $370,000. Bringing the capital budget down to $2,506,345. And how the capital budget is funded is mostly through the use of free cash. However, with the the likely reduction in our local estimated receipts, which is the primary driver of free cash, we'd probably look to retain as much free cash as possible moving forward. It's fiscally prudent. It's an available source of funds. We don't know what revenues are going to come in. So if we can conserve as much free cash as possible, that's a good move forward. So this would use $2,226,000 of free cash, and then the other available funds, which are already money in the bank, to make the $2,506,345 for possibly updated capital budget. So moving forward and talking about free cash, we were fortunate the free cash was certified at over $5 million for last year. So far we used almost $480,000 at a special town meeting in January, another $75,000 the special town meeting in March, leaving a balance of 4.7. If we reduce the capital budget, we would be using $2,226,000, leaving a balance in free cash of $2,496,922 to carry forward to next year, provided we don't use any additional free cash for items at this town meeting. So, seeking some of the board's direction on some of the other capital articles, we have OPEB funding for $300,000. Of that, $150,000 is coming from the tax levy and $150,000 from overlay surplus. If we reduce it by $150,000 to only use the amount coming from overlay surplus, that would give us a savings of $150,000 to the tax levy, or the amount that needs to be raised through the tax. Another capital article was the Capital Stabilization Fund, where we had proposed to establish this fund and then transfer $1.7 million from free cash into the Capital Stabilization Fund. If we want to conserve as much free cash as possible moving forward, then we should take no action. It would be our recommendation to take no action on this article at this time. Another article, capital article funded through the tax levy, is the Eldridge Public Library. The repairs there, $1,317,000, of which $1.1 million is coming from the tax levy. I did speak with Terry Whalen to see if we could have a reduced scope for this article, because these repairs are very important to protect the building. So he went back and he found that we could have a reduced scope, which would be $701,800, with $206,000 coming from the Community Preservation Act Fund, and then only $495,600 coming from the tax levy. Again, a savings of almost $700,000 for the amount that needs to be raised through the tax levy. And then we have other capital articles, and these are all borrowing authorizations. So again, the board direction on moving forward. You voted the Council on Aging at your meeting previously. The stormwater also has been included, and the transfer station is still, there was an amount to be determined, although it is included on the warrant. And some of the discussion regarding the borrowing authorizations is, even if they are approved, we don't have to go out and spend them and begin the projects right away. We could probably time those in at a different rate, at a different time, when we might have a better bidding opportunity and people might be hungry, but we don't know what that is. Or we could defer these to a time, a later date. I'm not sure. This is all what we're asking the board for direction on this evening. So again, our FY 2021 priorities, the operating budget, capital budget, other capital articles, and how those are funded, and then the other capital articles, the borrowing articles, and the debt exclusion articles that we have on the warrant. So again, moving forward for our annual town meeting election, we'll need to decide whether we have annual town meeting election prior to the close of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. What warrant articles are on that, and then if we want to defer, is there future action for some of those items so we could possibly have a fall special town meeting. If the annual town meeting is after the close of the fiscal year, we would continue with the current budget numbers at 1/12 for the month of June, the month of July moving forward. And then again, free cash, the current balance is able to carry forward, and both of these items do require both the Board of Selectmen and the Department of Revenue's approval. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go over anything in further detail. I'm sure there's quite a few questions.
Thank you, Alex. That's a lot to unpack for us to look at. I know that everybody's deeply concerned about what the future is going to lie for the town itself and its residents going forward. I think we probably will be shifting some of our priorities as we look at the next couple of years. Thank you for bringing an overview of what we can deal with. I'm looking at the idea that the OPEB, we fund it through the overlay surplus and not do the other one, and agree with the no action on the stabilization fund. When it comes to capital projects and things like that, what I've been bouncing around with a couple of people, the selectmen and finance people, is that perhaps when we look at the town meeting, the concept of town meeting, that if we can do a town meeting prior to the end of the fiscal year, that it only be for the operating budgets of the schools and the town itself and the water. However, when it does come to these capital projects, I really think that we're going to have to really shift into priorities. That if we go to annual town meeting, what is that going to look like? How are we going to look at things in 2 or 3 months? It's certainly not going to be the same as it was, when we put this together, as you started to put together last October. So those are my initial thoughts. I know you're looking for feedback. So I'm going to throw it out to the board and call on Jeff to weigh in, and then I'll ask others. Jeff?
Thank you, Shireen. Yeah, I lost you for a second, so I hope I don't lose you again. But this is probably our most important item on the agenda this evening. But we gotta assume, I think, that our local receipts are going to be dramatically decreased, because hotel, motels, and meals tax certainly are going to be much less, I would believe, in July and August this year. I think we need to assume that we need to be conservative at this point in time. This is so unprecedented in terms of its scale and scope and breadth, and we don't have any history to go by here as finance people, never mind as fiduciaries of our municipal budget. So I think to be conservative now is absolutely the call. I think to be over prepared is the call. To over assume negativity in terms of finances is probably the right thing to do here, or is the right thing to do. I think as a macro statement, and we've had some discussions, I think we need to preserve and maintain our levels of liquidity. So I totally agree with Alex's suggestion of no action on stabilization fund. That's a no-brainer. We do want to lock those monies up. We want to keep them in free cash. The OPEB, keeping OPEB another 150 grand off the tax levy, I would agree with that. That's a no-brainer as well. So I would strongly support those. I would also support, in the interim here, kind of to be forewarned is to be forearmed. Take a real hard look at the overall cost of our government, any new FTEs that we have teed up, what we're thinking about doing with those or not. Because we really, I think, because the future is so unclear, kind of the game plan is how do we buy time and kind of get more time under our belt to discern how this is going to play out. I wrote down in my notes, we have a whole litany or list of CPA funds that, if I were to revote those CPA fund expenditures today versus a month ago, whenever we did it, I would take a very different cut at those CPA funds and would vote very differently, to be quite frank with you. I would love to know how we could even redirect some of those dollars. That's $1 million out there to where needs might be most met now with respect to rental assistance and housing, et cetera. So I'd like to have some feedback from those more knowledgeable than I on the use of CPA funds, if we could. The numbers that I kind of wish we had the slides before we chatted here tonight, but if we took a 50% haircut, if I understand you correctly, Alex, we'd have to look for about 1750 in the budget. If I assume a 50% haircut on our local receipts, and that would be, I think, at 245K, about a 5 to 7% reduction somehow in the operating budget. Is that a fair statement? So, I mean, if we would say, look, we think local receipts are going to be down 50%, just to be ultra conservative, to decrease the operating budget by 1.7, I think it's about 7%. If you take 245K as the number, is that correct?
Yeah, this is Alex.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting feedback.
I get about 7%. I mean, so, if you want, my opinion is we prepare for the worst and hopefully it'll be better. I would do the minimal in capital. I mean the minimal. If the roof is leaking at the Eldridge Public Library, and we need to fix the roof so we don't ruin the infrastructure of the library and the books, et cetera, then I certainly would support that. But I think to go to the town at this point and ask them to fund, $8.3 million for a council on aging is not wise. I don't think it would be met well, frankly. And the $4.5 million on water improvements, I need to revisit what we're actually funding there, because I think that I wouldn't mind revisiting that as well. So I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm very concerned about local receipts. This summer, I'm concerned about going to the town, even in June and June 22nd, not really being fully prepared to how we're going to deal with a council on aging ask and an Eldridge Library ask, these large numbers that we're looking at. I'm very concerned about going to the town and getting a warm response. I want to give these projects, and I think they're excellent projects, and they're due consideration and due presentation by us to our town, and due deep consideration by the town as well. So I think I would support the notion of having a town meeting end of June, approving only the budgets that we need to approve, meaning the town operating budget, Monomoy Regional School budget, the regional school budget, and the water department operating budget. And I would stop there in terms of what we'd be looking for approvals in June, and then move on with the large capital expenditures in the fall. So those are my thoughts. Those are my near-term thoughts. Obviously, I want to hear from everybody else, but I'm, obviously concerned about local receipts this summer. We've never been in this type of spot before, and certainly don't look forward to dealing with it ever again. But those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Selectman Dykens kind of summed up what I was thinking. I'm going to put it just a little bit differently and then give you some thoughts on the budget. I mean, we are in a position where we're not going to know where we are, certainly not by June, and probably at least a little bit more by the fall. By that, I mean, even if we believe that by May 4th we will be on a downturn, we certainly aren't going to be back to normal business in another month and a half. All you have to do is look at what's happened in other places and wherever we are. So I agree with being extremely conservative. I also agree that we should maintain strong free cash. I mean, it's like if you're living day to day and you run into this problem, and our local citizens, or a number of them, are going to be looking at what are they going to spend their money on, and usually you're told, you have to eat, you have to have your utilities, and you need your rent, and that's to keep you alive and keep you going. And that's how we, I think, have to best focus on where we plan to be, at least in the near term. But we do have, we have challenges for our the economic challenges for our residents, our businesses, and also for obviously for the town. And have to understand there are things that have to get done, and let's call it the infrastructure, so that especially the library and also our soaring. I don't know. Yeah, I agree with Selectman Dyken's 4.5 million. What happens if we don't do part of it? And usually when that happens, you run into all kinds of problems of funding. You have zero interest loans and so forth. So, but it's worth at least looking at. And then what about our future? We have to balance that against our future, but we don't have to balance it in the near term. So I went down the whole list of our warrant articles on things that I thought might be interesting, but I think most of it has been discussed. Obviously, keeping free cash, as high as we can. Capital projects at the transfer station. We have a TBD, but there's an OSHA problem there. Normally an OSHA problem is critical, and we should probably consider that. I talked about stormwater and also the Eldridge Public Library. The roof's leaking. You have to fix it. It's just going to get worse. And then we come down the line with CPA, and I agree. There's a whole bunch of things in here that I would have changed when it comes to CPA fundings, especially when you consider we come out on the other side of this. We're going to have issues, that have to do with people, where they lived, what they do. The idea of having more affordable housing will probably should be a primary concern, and maybe we should be focusing a little bit more on that. That doesn't mean we give up on everything else. And if you look past the old CPA, there's a whole bunch of things that you kind of question. Well, do we really need to do them? And I'm not that informed of how much we could change or whether we'd have to go get some sort of approval through the state. The OPEB trust, I agree with that. I agree that we should take the COA, both the COA issues that we have on here for both areas, and delay them till a later time. Remember, we had a citizens petition that wanted to put stepping stone on the warrant, which we did. It's going right through. We should have funding and should have an idea of how much it's going to cost. We could put that to bed and put it aside for a special town meeting. And I agree. I think I have a question for myself. What happens if we wait? Don't do a town meeting before June 30th, and just decide to do a full town meeting in the fall. I say that, and at the same time, I don't necessarily agree. It's a question of, does it make sense to do that? I don't think so. If we go with a bare bone budget, we have something that we can start with, and I would expect, and I hate to do this because I have really no clue that if we have a June 22nd meeting, that may get delayed a little bit farther. But I think we should make a commitment to have a bare bones budget also, and to commit that we're going to have a special town meeting in the fall. Let me look at just quickly if there's anything in here I missed on the. No, I guess that's it. Thank you, Alex. You did. This is a nice job. I appreciate what you put in here, and especially on the question about the total number of FTEs. I guess if I was going with a bare bone budget, I'd put one in there, and that would be the person that's going to, the one that I think is the most important. That has to the project that not project, but the individual person that's going to be and I don't want to call it public relations because it's much more than that, but that one individual. Because if we're not doing a number of articles for a while, maybe we can kind of slide on a couple of those, or maybe just a half a person. But it's hard to. In a time like this, one, to try to raise the taxes, that to me is, you don't do that. And second of all, be very, very careful on your budgeting and personnel issues as you continue, because you don't want to, increase where you really don't need to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Corey? Corey, are you-
Hello. Yeah, now I'm not going to restate all that the previous speakers have said. I'm in a pretty much full agreement with their comments. We need to do a bare bones, bare bones action in June. That's the simple reality of it. June is a short time away. No matter what happens, how we're going to come out of this thing, I do not know. Push off most of these things as much as we can until the fall. The capital projects, they can wait a couple months. I fully understand the concerns of delaying things. Will the market be better for us if we delay? Will it be worse? We don't know. The simple fact is they don't belong. We don't need to take action on those right now. It's not the time. It's not the place. We need to take care of our priorities. I would like to, with the staffing reassessments, I would ask if the half FTE for the fire is something that would be a benefit under the current operations. I don't know that. I'm asking that. So I would just ask that as that gets reassessed, because I don't know how the fire rescue is what their workload is. I'm sure they're they're working very hard. So let's take care of a bare bones budget in June. Try to do as much as we can. This is certainly not business as usual. I mean, we're very, very clear on that. Push everything else into the fall. The COA, we want people to be able to attend these meetings and take action. And in June, their mind is not going to be focused on these things. Simply isn't. So anything that we can control, let's push off. I understand petition articles are going to probably end up being at the next town meeting, whenever that it may be, and those will act on accordingly. So other than that, let's just focus on our priorities and do what we have to do in the short time, and push off the rest of the business for a few more months. I think we're fine. I think we'll be fine.
Thank you, Corey. Very optimistic when you say I think we'll be fine. Dean, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go a little scattershot on this, and I'm going to try to push in a different direction, because I'm not very optimistic that we're going to be able to have a real annual town meeting in June. I know the town manager has suggested June 22nd, and that suggestion was made before the legislature passed their bill on Friday, which I'm assuming the governor signed. I can be corrected if I'm wrong, which allows the annual town meeting to be extended beyond June 30th. And it also allows for a 1/12 budget month by month, overseen by the Department of Revenue and the Board of Selectmen. And I'm not sure why that isn't a better approach. It allows you to use the current year budget month to month as a threshold to carry on needed expenditures. I'm concerned that if we have an annual town meeting date set tonight, then the Board of Selectmen, as I understood from the previous vote we took a few weeks ago, we would lose control over the date of that meeting once it's set in terms of any future postponements, because then it would be up solely to the town moderator to make that change. And I would like to see the Board of Selectmen control the date of the town meeting. I'm suggesting that maybe we might want to consider postponing the annual town meeting till the fall. And by the fall, I mean the very early fall or late summer, perhaps in late August, and simply go on the 1/12 basis. I don't know the answer to this question: what happens to the assessments to the school districts on the 1/12 budget? And perhaps Alex could address that, and perhaps Alex and the town manager, when I'm finished here, could address what they think about the 1/12 budget. Keep in mind that we have petition articles that were put forward. They were put forward for the annual town meeting. One of those petition articles deals with the Monomoy Theater. Another deals with Stepping Stones Road. If we go ahead with this petition article for Stepping Stones Road is on the warrant, and the Selectmen's own article for 1610 Main Street may be deferred until the fall. That doesn't make any sense to me. A couple of points on the on particulars. I agree with what's been said, starting with Jeff. I think we could drop the OPEB piece that comes out of free cash. I think we should preserve as much free cash as possible. I agree with deferral of a stabilization fund. With respect to the Eldridge Public Library, I, as the liaison for the board to the EPL, I know that that's a serious, the roof is a serious issue. It does leak. I think there have been some remedial measures that have been put in place. I don't know how long-term they are, but it is a real problem. With respect to the CPC funds, I know in terms of the ability to redirect, I agree with some of the priorities in terms of housing and so forth. That's permitted, I think, under the existing CPA statute. Unfortunately, the legislature has not, I don't know if they've even been asked, to allow a town in these emergency circumstances to redirect some of those CPA monies to the regular town budget. That would be a big help if we could get several $100,000 out of the CPA funds that wouldn't be limited to recreation, housing, historical preservation, and so forth. Anyway, I'd like to have some serious discussion about whether having a town meeting in June is even feasible. I think it's going to be, even if the focus is solely on a core services budget, where are you going to get 100 people to get together comfortably in late June, given what's going on? I don't think it's going to be possible. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Dean. Points well made. I wasn't planning personally to even vote on a potential date today. My thought was that we'd have this discussion and somewhat marinate it a little bit and provide some feedback. I know you asked Jill and Alex to weigh in on some things. Just as a point, it came up through the moderator that a suggestion would be if we did have a meeting in June, that it could possibly be held at the Veterans Field outdoors. I guess some of the other moderators that he's in touch with have discussed a similar need. But is it a need? That's the question. Is there a need? And I really didn't realize about the petition warrant articles being on that annual town meeting, that they'd have to go forward as well. Alex and Jill, do you want to weigh in on what Dean had asked?
Yeah, so this is Jill. I'm not asking the board to set a date for the annual town meeting or the annual town election tonight. We wanted to put it out there, and especially with the new legislation that just came down on Friday afternoon. So right now, I'm not even sure we need to have it before June 30th. So in taking, Selectman Nicastro's comments to heart, I do need to find out from town council about the status of the petitioned articles. They were signed with the requisite number of 10 signatures. That's for an annual town meeting. So that's some direction that I do need. And in fact, tonight was just the initial discussion. What Alex and I are planning to do is come back every week at the meeting and have the discussion about budget priorities and town meetings. So I don't want you to feel obligated to have to make a motion tonight to do anything. We can certainly follow up next week.
Madam Chair.
Alex, do you have any comments? No.
I think there was a question on the regional assessments. So I think that we would have to honor that. I'd have to check on that. So I'm not sure whether it would just be 1/12 of their current assessments that we would pay going forward from month to month, or 1/12 of what they are approved. So I'll check on that and get back to the board.
Madam Chair, it's Dean.
Yeah, go ahead, Dean.
I agree with what's just been said. I wanted to get those ideas out. I think you're correct in thinking we should, mull these over. Perhaps we will, when we next meet, which may be next week, hopefully.
Do we lose him?
We might be in a position to take a vote next, maybe not. But I think we ponder these items very carefully. And I would just want to echo something I neglected to say. I think Peter brought it up in terms of the staffing. I totally agree that the most important position of those that have been proposed is and I've forgotten the title, Jill, but it's the position that expands the role that the executive secretary to the board and to the town manager is currently doing. I think that's a really critical piece of part of our staffing. Thank you.
Yes, she's that position has effectively been working very hard right now, and has come in handy, and it's been really great to have an extra. It proves that we do need that position. Any other comments from the board? I'm taking that we're taking no action on this tonight unless somebody wants to make a motion, but I'm getting the consensus that we're not, that we're going to further this discussion.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Who are you recognizing?
Jeff.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't suggesting a motion by any way, shape, or form. I think it's great to have this to be thinking about. I thought Selectman Castro made some excellent points. My notion was if we were to have anything in June, it would be a minimalist warrant, and whether that comes under the aegis or the auspices of a special or not, I wouldn't call it an annual. I don't know if we can even do this, but I would call it a special just to approve the budgets that we need to approve to continue the operations of the towns and the Monomoy School and the regional school. That's all I was suggesting to do. But I think
Madam Chair.
Yeah. Thank you. And I also support the position that has been under discussion. It's a very important position. So I would support that position. Yes.
Thank you, Jeff. Peter, was that you wanting to weigh in again?
Yeah, just a comment. I appreciate what Selectman Castro said, and also Jill's point of view. You know, it's stating the obvious in a way, but we're in a position now where we don't know anything. Maybe in another 2 or 3 weeks, we'll know a little bit more, so we can be a little smarter about what we want to do. And that, to me, makes a considerable amount of sense. I guess I would ask, ask Jill. The last time we'd have to make a decision if we wanted to do it in June, I would expect would be the 1st of June or end of May, I guess. Which gives us a little bit more time if we want to, if we even wanted to consider it. But as I said before, I don't see how it's going to be difficult to do something in June unless everything works out very, very well, and we do much better than other countries or other areas have done in recovering from this virus. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any other discussion? Corey, are you all set? Corey?
Thank you.
All set. Do we have any comments from the remote participants? Okay, not hearing any. We're going to move on. And before we close tonight, Jeff, when you had been bumped off, we made the vote on the tax deferred property, and we wanted to get your vote on that motion. So I'm going to ask Shauna to read it again, and then I'll ask you for your vote. Shauna?
Hi, bear with me while I find it.
Thanks, Shauna.
Okay, it was a motion, amended motion actually, to extend property tax bills to the deadline for property tax bills to June 1st, 2020, and offer payment plans in accordance with Mass General Law. And the amendment was to also extend the due date for interest on the property taxes to June 1st, 2020.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Shauna, and I vote aye.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is going to conclude our regular meeting. I'm going to ask for a roll call to,
Here, it's Dean. I just wanted to make sure, because it's on the agenda, that over the next week or two, in addition to discussing the budget and the timing of the annual town meeting, we need to also firm up the date of the election, the annual town.
yes.
Legislation that was passed last week doesn't address that. So technically, it has to be done by June 30th, but maybe the legislature is going to act again on this, or the governor.
Okay, thank you, Dean.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sorry. Announcement.
I lost him.
We can't hear you. Corey?
Corey?
Yeah.
Corey, if you can hear, could you text what you want to say? Or send it to the town manager, because we're getting ready to, oh, there you are.
He's back.
Hi, Corey, can you repeat what you just
Can you hear
said?
me? No,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, we forgot one small announcement. Your announcement for the station on Easter Sunday.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Yes, that's great.
So the transfer, go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, so I decided to close the transfer station on Sunday, April 12th, so that the employees can get a day off to spend with their families and celebrate the holiday. So it will be back on for Monday, and just our great appreciation to the transfer station staff. That's the one facility that is still open to the public.
Thank you, Jill.
Wonderful idea.
Yeah, good move.
Yeah, you bet. They've done a great job over the last few weeks.
They have. Okay, we are going to end this regular meeting with a roll call to vote to end. And then we're going to take a break for 5 minutes, and then we will go into executive session. We're going to end this video call and go into executive session. So, yes.
Don't we have to take the vote to go into executive session during the open session? Jill is nodding her head yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. So we're going to vote to go into executive session then. Executive session, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategies with respect to a potential litigation, Dr. Neil Coles, and the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body with no return to open session. Motion.
Madam Chair, this is Dean. I offer that motion to go into executive session under Mass General Laws 38, Section 21, Number 3, as you articulated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Selectman Nicastro.
Yes.
Selectman Metters.
Aye.
Selectman Dykens.
Aye.
Selectman Kokolas.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. All right, we will regroup in 5 minutes. Good night, Chatham. Be well, be safe, and stay home.